Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another live webcast from Capture. As you can see, today we're joined by this massive Death Star disco ball, because tonight is actually the first semi-final of the Eurovision Song Contest. So in about an hour from now that starts, so this is a perfect warm-up for a nice show to watch in an hour. So today I'm going to be talking about new features in Capture 2018, and I will be showing you a number of things. I will be ready to answer your questions as well. So make sure to post your questions in the comments field below the video as we're rolling. But before we get to the highlights of today, I just want to thank everyone who dropped by our booth at the Pro Light and Sound show in Frankfurt, where we attended as usual. And this year we were joined also by John from the UK, who helped us out at a stand. So thanks very much for everyone who dropped by, and we look forward to seeing you soon again. Also, before I start talking about the new features in Capture 2018, I want to talk a little bit about the new rendering engine of 2018, which, as you probably know, we are rolling out, meaning that a number of features are already available, but more features will be added in the coming weeks. The past weeks since the release, we have focused mainly on fixing issues that we have discovered, both as in bugs and misbehaviors, but also with regard to drivers a bit. So the background, to recap a little bit, one of the reasons we are moving away from OpenGL and we've made a new rendering engine is because of all the issues we've had with OpenGL both on Windows and Mac OS, but also to get access to new functionality in video cards, which we couldn't get access to in the version of OpenGL that Mac OS has locked it down to. Now, initially we had not planned to do both Metal and DirectX in Capture 2018. So DirectX is the Windows graphics API, and Metal is the Mac OS graphics API that replaces OpenGL. So initially we had only intended to do DirectX on Windows, but because of the rather poor state of the OpenGL drivers in Mac OS 10.13, our hand was forced a bit, and we decided to do both DirectX and Metal for Capture 2018. So that's one of the main reasons it's not feature or wasn't feature complete at release. Another reason is we were pretty worried about the Metal drivers on Mac OS, and we are in fact seeing that some users are having problems with the Metal drivers even on the latest 10.13.4 of High Sierra. So to those of you who have been helping us out by testing the new rendering engine and have run into issues, I'd just like to say that we continue working on understanding how they happen and reporting to Apple as far as we can some way for Apple to fix these issues. It's difficult when the driver syncs the entire system so that it just deadlocks completely. Then it's very difficult for us to send them much constructive information, but we're doing our best, and hopefully Apple can do their part and fix the drivers as well. When it comes to Windows and DirectX, as far as we can see, there haven't been any serious driver issues at all. Actually, there have been a few cases of old drivers, which is always a risk. So if you're a Windows user, always make sure that you have the latest drivers installed for your computer. And if you have a laptop, keep in mind that sometimes it's better to go directly to Intel, NVIDIA, or AMD to get the drivers, because if you have a Dell or a Toshiba or whatever you have, these manufacturers of laptops, they repackage the drivers, and usually there's quite a delay between what AMD has released, for instance, and what is available through the Dell update channel. So have fresh drivers and get them straight from the source, essentially. So it's time to move on to the main section here, which is basically me showing things in Capture and trying to answer questions as well. So I've got a screen on my side here where I can read your questions. And first we have a statement congratulating us on our support, so thank you very much. Thank you for your kind words. We try very hard to have good support. It's been very hectic the past weeks after the release, so yeah, if some had to wait a few days more than usual, then we apologize, but I think we are all back to normal operation again, and with all the worst issues we did out from 2018, we're in full effect. So let's start with taking a look at some Capture 2018 features. So if you have any questions, again, in the comment field, and I'll tend to them as fast as I can. Hi back to Nick from South Africa. So the first thing I want to talk about is a new concept in Capture 2018 that we call Fixture Locations. Fixture Locations is about the logical connection between a fixture and the truss it's attached to in some way. Now in Capture, when you snap a fixture to a truss, the fixture doesn't actually become attached to the truss in any way at all. So if you were then to select the truss and move it, the fixture doesn't move along. You would have to group them or select them both. Now with Fixture Locations, there are a number of new possibilities opening up. The first one I'm going to show you is related to the selection of fixtures. So I have a design here where front of house I have a bar and a number of profiles hung on it. And the first function I want to show you is the select all by closest truss. The idea of this function is that you want to select a truss with all the fixtures on it and move it. So what I will do is I select the truss, I choose from the first menu, that is important, select all by closest truss. As you can see now, this adds the trusses to the selection. So if I was to move the selection now, it is the truss or bar, pipe in this case, with the fixtures along with it. Now this of course works equally well if I have selected multiple pipes. So if I go select all by closest truss, it adds all the fixtures on the trusses I had selected. A cousin function, if I may, that is related to this function and also new in Capture 2018 is a function called select all by truss adjacency. Now the idea here is that you have a truss construction of multiple truss pieces snapped together, and you want to select the entire construction, but you haven't grouped them. So you click on a truss and you get just this one piece, and now you want to select the rest as well. So the way you can do that is by using select all by truss adjacency, which now selects, in this case, the 3 pieces of truss that are snapped together. After which, of course, you could go on with the select all by closest truss that adds the fixtures as well. So these are 2 powerful tools to optimize the way you work with pipes and trusses and fixtures without necessarily forcing you to group everything. Some users like to group anyway, so this is a complement, obviously, to the ways you can work. Now, another aspect of Fixture Locations has got to do with reports and, well, paperwork. So in this case, I have labeled the bars. So the first one here is LX1. And if I zoom in a bit so you can see, there's also LX10, LX11, and so on further down the grid. That means that I have a bar here with a name. I've called it LX1. So it would be interesting to see which fixtures are on LX1 in my paperwork. And that is one of the main ideas behind this fixture locations concept. So if I go to my, well, let's start with the fixture locations report. So this is a new report in Capture 2018 that breaks things down by fixture locations. So in this case, it's essentially listing the bars in the design and what is on them. Now I think by default it also includes the truss itself, but that is optional. So if you only care to see the fixtures, you can uncheck the include trusses option and the trusses will go away. So this is a report that lists fixtures by location and sums up or summarizes the weight as well as the power consumption by the fixtures on these trusses. Fixture location is also shown on the fixture report. So if I create a fixture report and open that up, you can see there is a location column. Now I haven't got location information for all fixtures in this project at the moment, so it starts a bit further down here. You can see it says LX1 and so on. I can also sort by the location column if I want, sort of breaking down the fixture report by location. And of course, if I export fixture data, that is, if I use File, Export Fixture Data to a CSV file, there is also a column with a fixture location included in the CSV file. Now, one little trick here, or option, is that you can select a fixture, and in selected items you will see there is a property called location. So this allows you to override the bar or truss that Capture finds automatically if for some reason, well, you need to override it, or you want to give a fixture a location that isn't actually close to a truss. So if I write, let's say, hello. So I've overridden the location of this fixture to hello. So now if I go to the report, to fixture locations, there's now actually a section called hello. So one scenario this is useful is if you have imported truss, for instance, from a DWG, and Capture doesn't understand its truss, so you need to help Capture a bit. Or if you have trusses very close to each other in corners, for instance, where you want to give different sections different names, then it can be useful to override the location information. So we have a first question from Nick. So I'm done here with the fixture locations bit. So I'm going to take Nick's question before I move on. Excuse me. So Nick is asking, some LED screens have a curvable setup. Is this possible in Capture? And if not, will it be featured in the future? So yes, some LED screens indeed, there are a few different varieties, but one is where the edges are actually, they are not straight, which gives you the ability to have an angle in both directions. So what we want to do essentially is improve the snap function so that when you snap these together, you can add the angle information as well. That would make it a lot easier to create the curve setup. You will need to create it by column, for instance. So you'd make one column of screens, clone that, snap it to the first one, and tilt it. But it is indeed something we have on the list for the future, yes. So moving on, I want to talk briefly about a new feature in Capture 2018, which is called filters. Now, filters is actually a new take on a previous feature we had, which was called layer sets. So filters is layer sets with some added functionality. And the added functionality is that you can also filter by DMX universe. So this is particularly useful for plots where you want to filter out DMX universes on the plots or in the reports as well. Now the thing I want to highlight is there's one important change from Capture Nexum, where in Capture Nexum, if you double clicked on a layer set, Capture would apply that layer set to all of the views. What happens in Capture 2018 when I double click on a layer set is actually it goes into the renaming mode so that I can rename the layer set. So for those users who are used to the old way, what is important to know is you can right click and choose apply to all views. This was possible in the previous versions as well, and double click actually did this apply to all views. And the function is also available down here under the More button, which actually reveals the same menu as when you right click on any of the items. Now some have asked, well, how is it that you can't see which filter is active? And the reason is that there is not actually one filter active, because you can have different filters in different views. So once you get your head around that, it makes sense that there can't actually be one active filter, because you could have 3 filters active, as opposed to the layers where there is always one current layer where any items you add to your design automatically end up. Right. So again, if you have questions, make sure to write them in the comments field. And I'm going to move on to another new feature in Capture 2018, which we call report items. The idea behind report items is that you want to add information to the report about objects that are not available in Capture's library, or that you've drawn yourself, or that you haven't even drawn, but you simply want to put them in the report. So looking, for instance, at the equipment report, we can see here there are some fixtures, filters, gobos, accessories, trusses, and panels in the project. Now imagine I wanted to add some specific truss pieces not in the Capture library. They could be something from a ground support or something I've built custom. What we can then do is we can go to the library, scroll down here in the built-in section, pick up a report item, and drag that into the design. So as you can see, there's now an object here in the design that I can click, I can move it, so I can place it. But as I zoom, it's not a 3D object, it's an icon that represents some information. Now this information can be anything. It's up to me what I want it to be. So if I wanted to count some slings for the rigging, for instance, let's say I need red slings. And for this bar, this doesn't quite make sense, but let's say I need 2 red slings for this bar. And then I need also 2 red slings for this bar. And let's say for this bar. Now if I go to the equipment report, you'll see that down here in the other section, we've got 6 red slings. And the reason it says 6 red slings, although I added 3 report items, is that I put the number 2 here, meaning that for each report item I want 2 slings. I also want to mention the other fields here. So looking at the report, you may have noticed that the red slings appeared under the section called Other. I have 2 options here, in fact. I can have it appear both under Other or under the Trusses section. So if I were to choose let's just move this out here for a moment. If I were to choose the trusses section instead, then I need to refresh the report actually, sorry. Then that one pair of red slings now ends up under the trusses. So you have a choice here whether you want your report items under the trusses or under the other section, where you can in fact also fill in the text you want for the type column if you need. Now obviously I didn't put any weight here to begin with, but I could select these 3 report items now and say each red slings weighs, I don't know, let's say 2 kilos. So we'll have 6 times 2 kilos of weight added to the equipment report. Although broken down here, no, sorry, so the weight is actually the sum weight of all the items. So we've got 2 kilos for those and 2 kilos for those. That's a bit odd actually. I must have made a mistake selecting them. And there are some questions coming in. So I have one more remark about the report items, but yes, those are other questions. So the other remark I have about report items is that if you are using the rigging symbols, these actually count in reports now as well. So if I add, let's add 2 rigging points here. If I go back to the equipment report, you will see that I've got 2 rigging points on the list as well. If I want to use different rigging points and keep them separate, for instance, let's say we have this one here rated for a few tons and the other one for more tons, then we can use the name field here. You see it says report item here because the rigging point is also a report item. So now in the report it's broken down to the more tons and the few tons rigging points. So you can have different types of rigging points, but it's up to you how you want to categorize and name them. So let's switch to a few questions here. We have one question from Paul Rosinski, who asks, in plot paperwork, will you be able to reshape the title bar, i.e. it is great at the bottom of the page, but if needed to be on the right side of the page? So I believe Paul is referring to this header here, the project information header, which indeed we are hoping or planning to give more flexibility in the future, yes. It is a great opportunity though to show another new feature in Capture 2018, which is the snapping. So you can see now that the plot header here does actually snap in the plot editor. And this is new in Capture 2018. So if you want to align multiple insets, they snap to each other's edges and corners. So it's much easier to create neat layouts of insets in the paperwork with Capture 2018. Moving on, we have a question from Eli, or Ellie, I'm sorry. Would it be possible to have more information in the library when clicking a fixture? Yes. So actually with the design of Capture 2018, we redid the whole library tab to a new layout. And this has actually lost some information that was visible before. So if we type source 4, you see we in fact only have the fixture name at this point, whereas before you could expand and see some sub-information. And we're working on finding ways of revealing parts of this information again, but it was very difficult to combine in a view that is easy and fast to work with, basically. So, and in general, we do tend to prioritize, or we give a lot of priority to designing features in a way that they are predictable and fast to work with. So I shall move on a little bit again, but we will stick to the general topic of plots and paperwork. One feature that was very frequently requested in the past was related to symbols of fixtures and the size of them. For various reasons, it's very useful to be able to scale the symbols and give them different sizes, for instance, to distinguish between different fixture types, or simply to compensate for the fact that some plots need to be printed very zoomed out, which can have an effect on readability. So we decided to introduce symbol scaling on two levels. The first and perhaps most obvious one is through the use of plot styles. So plot styles is a way in Capture to, well, apply a style to a plot, as the name implies. And this includes things such as text sizes and what kind of detail you want to see for fixtures. So as you can see here, we have some text sizes to choose between and the symbol scale, which I am about to show you, as well as a number of checkboxes for different features that you can hide and show. So we have a plot style called paperwork. It is in fact already applied to the alpha view because it says paperwork up here. The way you apply a plot style is by drag and dropping it in a view. And once we've applied the plot style, we can start editing it and see the effect. So if I increase the symbol scale to 200%, as you might expect, the symbols double in size. Now this of course applies to the entire plot within a given view. And what I mean by given view is that if you have multiple views in a plot, you can apply different plot styles to different views. So you can have one view with designed for one type of information and another view customized for another type of information. But sometimes you need to drill down a little bit more and give different sizes to different types of fixtures or even specific fixtures. And the way you can do that in Capture 2018 is by using the plot section symbol scale property of the fixture itself. So if I type 200% here, you can see how I applied that scale to these four fixtures only. Now this scale does in fact combine with the scale of the plot style. So if I've got 200% both in the plot style and the fixture, and these four fixtures, they are going to be 4 times as large, because that's 200% plus 200%. So this is a great way to help you customize and modify the plots to increase readability and, well, readability mostly. So I'm going to move on to another feature. Again, if you have questions, please just write them in the comments field. The next thing I want to show you, and I'm going to reload the project here because I've played around quite a bit. The next thing I want to show you is the improvements we've done to the Dwg Export. It used to be that the Dwg Export exported what is known as polyphase meshes and lines in DWG. This meant that you lost some information in the process, like angles and rotations. And although you did get an export out of Capture, there were situations where it could be difficult to use it and in another workflow as you had left Capture. So I'm going to export a DWG from this project file. But first I'm going to add a couple of measurements just to show you what happens with measurements when we export. So in the library, under the built-in category, there is a distance measurement or dimension that I can drag and drop into the view here, So suppose I want to measure the distance between a few fixtures here. I would use the double click to select the ends of the measurements, and then rely on the snapping to align the measurement with the center of the fixtures in this case. So this is how you would dimension your drawing in Capture. So now I'm going to export this to a DWG. Export model from the file menu. I'm going to save it to the desktop in this case. I'm given a few choices here. So on export, I can choose to use a filter. So if I want to limit the export to a few layers or even some selected objects, actually, I can do that as well. And I'll just hit export here to export the entire design. So next, I'm actually going to open AutoCAD to show you and highlight the changes in the new Dwg export. So to begin with, each and every fixture exported comes out as a block. And this applies for all objects. So all objects in this export have actually come out as blocks. This is good because it means that we can preserve the position information as well as the angles. So you can see that this fixture I've selected here does have a position X, Y, and Z coordinate. And although I am a little bit unaccustomed to AutoCAD, to be honest, I can't actually see the angles by default here. But if I were to do a block replace, for instance, the block I replace with would actually retain the same orientation as the fixture had. This is one of the workflows that we see users doing outside Capture with DWGs. Now you can also see that we have some other information here, like the make, the name, the weight, the channel of this fixture. So what you can do with blocks in DWG is you can annotate them. That means you can add additional information. So on export from Capture, we've actually added pretty much all relevant information from the design, including things like the circuit and the patch, so that you have access to all the data in the DWG. Now let's take a look at what happened with those measurements that we added. Now, I didn't pay attention to place them at the right height, so they are actually down here at floor level, which if we go back to Capture, we can see that, yeah, they are actually down here at the floor level. But as you can see, these are actually full DWG dimensions, meaning that it's not just a piece of line art in any way, it's the same dimensioning tool as you would use in AutoCAD to dimension. And the same applies if you used angle measurements, for instance. You also get the angle dimension, native one of AutoCAD when you do that. And on top of this, of course, we've got all the layers in here, and the layer colors, whether they are locked or not, all that information is preserved on export as well. So we've really gone that extra mile to ensure that as much as possible comes out through the DWG to enable all those other awkward or weird or innovative workflows that we've seen around at different customers. So I believe that concludes the Dwg export bit. Yes. So I shall close AutoCAD and see if we have a question maybe, and we do. A question from Paul Rosinski. The same for the text. So Paul was asking if we will be able to customize the header inset of plots, that is down here is the header inset. So Paul was asking for the ability to customize it, and now he's asking whether we'll be able to customize also the text inset. So yes, now obviously those two need different types of customization, and an obvious one is the ability to rotate it. But yes, we are obviously looking into improving as much as possible, although I think the header has the top priority at the moment. And Paul is also asking, has this been used to change to Vectorworks as well as from DWG? So Capture doesn't have any kind of native Vectorworks support, because the Vectorworks file format is, well, it's closed and proprietary, and Vectorworks, they don't give access to the file format in any way. So the only way you can go back and forth between Vectorworks in a good way is through DWG. So by enhancing the DWG bit, we do make it better for the Vectorworks users as well. So you could export this design into Vectorworks, and you could do the block exchange to change the fixtures for symbols, for instance. I'm not sure I answered that question very well, but please, if you want to rephrase it or add more questions, please do. So this does pretty much conclude the things I had prepared for today. I'm going to see if we have any more questions popping up, but what we're working on next and moving forward, obviously, to begin with, we are rolling out the rest of the functionality in the new rendering engine. The main things that are left or have got to do with video, so video projections, panels, materials. Then we've got lasers, water jets, as well as the transparency package as well. It's our ambition to be done with this before July, if all goes well, and hopefully we will be able to work around any serious driver issues with Metal on Mac OS as well. So we have one more question here before we call it a day and get ready for the Eurovision. Colin Wood is asking, can we have the ability to reposition symbol text on a per fixture basis? Color, gobo, focus, and text. This is not something that is possible at the moment, but it is on our radar for the future, although it's not something a lot of our users have asked for. So in general, we do tend to prioritize features and feature requests that a lot of users ask for. So even if you see someone having asked for something already, don't be shy and let us know that you too would like that to happen, because if people hold back because someone has already mentioned something, then we will have no idea how popular that particular feature is. I'll squeeze in one more. Luke is asking, once you've dropped a report item in one of the views, how you can't it easily back? I'm afraid I don't quite follow that one. So if we would switch back to the computer desktop again, I'll see if I can improvise this one. So in the built-in section again of the library, we have the report item. And the report item, as I mentioned, is a widget actually. So we have this view option called widgets, which hides and shows the specific type of objects that we call widgets, and they are the cameras, the smoke box, and the report item. So by hiding the widgets, we can hide all the report items, camera and smoke boxes at once. That is very useful to know. I'm afraid I'm going to have to answer Luke's questions later in the chat probably. So that will be everything for us today. If you have any further questions, please do mail them to support@capturesweden.com. rather than on the chat, because then it's easier for us to track them. And I look forward to seeing you soon again, and please do enjoy the Eurovision if you're about to watch the first semi-finals in about 20 minutes. Thank you very much.